Hello, everybody. Today I am in Elberta, Alabama, with my good friend Gary Sizemore. I thought it would be interesting to bring you today a challenging situation. For those of you who have been following me along this past week, you will learn that our Wealth Building Club is launching and going to be adding residential real estate investments to our portfolio this year. And so I'd recently learned that Gary has been involved in a renovation project. And although many beginner investors are really not going to step off into something this big, I thought it would be rather interesting because another one of the options that we're going to be talking about is Airbnb. And this particular project, that is what the end result is going to be, is for Airbnb and also a little venue that Gary will be talking about here in just a second. So welcome, Gary, and you want to tell us a little bit about the background of this home?
Sure. Welcome, everybody. This is Terra Casa, and Terra Casa belongs to an investor now. And the house originally was built in 1901. The house was quite a bit smaller than it is now. It's been added on to probably a couple of times since then, some very close to the time that it was built, and you can tell that by the construction methods that were used and that kind of thing. While others have been added on later than that, and a lot of newer building techniques have been used in that. So that mesh of new and old together can be good, but it can also be a little bit problematic. And that's some of the things that we found when we got started working on this place. I came into this after a couple of other people had started and had failures, and came into it to help the lady out a little bit to see if we could get it back on track and get it turned out. So we're welcome, and we'll take a walk through and show you guys what the house is like and that. It's on a lot of acreage that is really beautiful. There's a lot of flowering plants, there's a lot of trees, a lot of natural areas, and those kind of things. So, again, real interesting landscape, and something that a lot of people would probably enjoy, hanging out in the natural space.
I love this little patio area here. This is going to be great. And as you can see, that cool little front porch, that is kind of known in these old homes, and people love hanging out on the front porch. So we're going to go over here a little bit, just to kind of give you an idea of where she would like to put that venue over here for, like weddings and stuff. Notice the landscaping, lots and lots of opportunity. This house and grounds has such potential. Over here it's going to be, y'all know I love plants and flowers, so it's just going to be, I can just envision it's just going to be spectacular. And you're thinking over in this direction here, Gary, is where she's going to want to put
Right.
that?
Somewhere right in here, the driveway comes back, and that area, it'll end with a large barn. And the barn will be a traditional barn for this area that has two stories, the lower area and the upper part. In the lower area, it will be purely an event space with open areas and that kind of thing. In the upper part, she wants to incorporate like a one-bedroom apartment. So half of the upstairs will be a small apartment. The rest of it will just be like an open area, and add to the space down below that will be used for weddings, parties, that kind of thing. And so hopefully we'll get started on that a little later in the spring. We're going to try and finish up the house in hopefully the next couple of months. And shortly after that, we'll get started on the barn and get that going.
So when you're talking about the house that you're working on right now, this will be the main house. And so what kind of will be the function of the main house?
She does a lot of things with it, but I think her goal is to Airbnb the house. And so she'll open it up. She has a couple of other properties that she Airbnbs, and she's going to add this to that list as well. So she'll stay in it sometimes, but I think mostly it's going to be rented out as an Airbnb.
Okay. And we did note that she's a lady that has some family members not very far from here, you know, in Destin and in the region. So this makes it a nice little getaway place for her where she can come down and enjoy your family. So if you've got family down in this area or something you might be dreaming about to do one day, this might be an option for you. Another thing that I noticed is that nice driveway, Gary, when you pull in, kind of gives you the illusion that you're out here all by yourself. So I think that's another really big selling point. And then the location, a lot of people may be thinking, where in the world is Elberta, Alabama? Can you kind of give us on the map about where Elberta is?
Sure. If we look a little bit to the west is Foley, Alabama, and Foley, Alabama is pretty much known for OWA. OWA is an amusement park and all that kind of thing, up and coming, really growing and that sort of thing. To the south is Orange Beach, and then to the east you get into Pensacola and those areas.
All right, well, let's go ahead and let's take a little look here and go ahead and head inside and see if we're going to be excited and delighted or if we're going to have a heart attack when we walk in. You know, a lot of people, especially investors, they don't know what they're walking into. And sometimes it scares them to death. So let's see what we've got here. What should we expect, Gary?
We'll look at a couple of things out here before we start inside.
Okay.
In this area, of course, we don't have basements and that sort of thing. So houses are kind of built on pillars. And you can see some of the pillars here. And that's just a brick pillar that's been built up. And then the house beams are set on that. And so that's one of the things, if you're looking at an older house like this, or a house in this area anyway, you want to take a look at those and make sure those are right. If they're not right, make them right before you start working on the house inside and that kind of thing. If you have to jack up a place on the house to make things level or something like that, if you've already done the inside work, there's a chance when you jack that up, you're going to crack the drywall and stuff that you put in, and you've just wasted that time and money. So might as well take care of those things first.
So that's a big, big lesson, folks. That could be an expensive lesson, and that could be one that would make or break your investment right there.
Right.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. So this is the back door. Again, the house has been added onto, and the back half of the house was added later on. So the area that we're walking into will be a little bit newer than the original house.
Okay, let me give you a little pan view here. Big, nice room. Big, nice kitchen area. Okay, Gary, it looks like these might be, are these windows new?
These are new windows. They were installed just before I came to work here. And a couple of things about the windows. Whoever installed the windows, purchased the windows, that kind of thing, didn't double check to make sure they were getting the right size windows. So a lot of places the window is shorter than the opening and that sort of thing. These openings were made for these three windows here, but a couple other things to watch for is to make sure that the top of them is level, that they're all the same height and that kind of stuff. If you don't, that takes away from the visual appeal and can kind of destroy the way that the room looks. So things like that are things to take into account. One of the things they did in here, if you notice the flooring, this is finished flooring. And they came in and put finished flooring down before drywall work was done and before a lot of the other work was done. When they did that, obviously everything is going to hit that floor, dust, dirt, drywall, mud, even potentially paint. And so, you know, as you lay out your project, watch things like putting finish in before you're ready to put finish in and those kind of things. Hopefully we can save this floor, but I'm not really sure yet whether that's going to be something that's possible or not.
Another thing that when you get into these older homes, I know I've had them before, when you start pulling up floors and stuff, sometimes you get a pleasant surprise and sometimes you don't. It's you want to tell us about the beautiful surprise that you found here, and then what happened to that surprise?
I'm not sure which surprise you're talking
The floor,
about.
the floor in there, that beautiful floor.
In the original house, not so much in this area. In the original house, this house was built with solid cherry hardwood floors. And those floors are beautiful, they're very expensive, and that kind of thing. One of the people who worked in here previously didn't really care about the floors, and so they just took a saw and cut a bunch of holes and stuff in those floors, making those floors no longer usable. There's still a couple of rooms that we can save the floors in, but a lot of it is going to have something else laid over top of it, which to me takes away from the natural beauty of this house, what was there to begin with.
Right. For some people it might not be important, but sometimes those can be a real gem when you uncover those. And then I know you mentioned something about this up here. You walk through, and that's one of the things that people notice. Your eye level, how you can see things, and when you're off just a little bit, it really is noticeable.
Right. Mm-hmm. The beam that Nancy's talking about, this beam that runs across here, was out 1.5 inches from one end to the other. So if you looked at it, this side looked real narrow, this side looked real wide. So we ended up having to drop the bottom of that down 1.5 inches on this side to give it that visual appeal, to make it look like it was straight and that type of stuff. When I look at a house project, particularly a remodel type project, the first goal that I have is to make it look like the house was that way originally. Like I had never been in there to do any remodeling, it was that way from the beginning. And so a lot of the things that I do are structured around that. So places where there's offsets in walls and things like that, typically I want to make those go away, because why would you build an offset in a wall originally? It's probably there because the house has been added onto and things didn't line up right and that sort of thing. So a lot of the spaces in here, we've done that. We took out places where there were offsets and that kind of stuff to give us nice straight lines to make it look like the house was originally built that way.
Another thing I'm noticing, I'm down here, and granted, it's unusually cold for this time of year, or even period down here. So I've got a jacket on today, and I noticed I'm in here in this house, and it's pretty chilly. So in these old homes, most of them, unless they've been renovated, don't have insulation, number one. And two, their heating and air conditioning could be a problem, as well as all of the electricity and all of that stuff, and the pipes, all of that stuff could be old, and might have to be upgraded, which could be a massive expense. You want to talk about each one of those a little bit?
Sure. As far as the insulation goes, this house was not built with insulation. Back in those days, that wasn't something that we really worried about. So a lot of the walls, anything that is a wall that we haven't interrupted, is still not insulated. Anything that we've looked at inside those walls and that sort of thing has new insulation in it. So a lot of the house is really well insulated. A few areas of the house is not insulated, and potentially there's some things that she may want to do, such as foam insulations or something like that. Without doing like a foam insulation, essentially we would have to tear all the walls out to the studs, put insulation in, redo the drywall, and that gets into a very big expense.
Another thing you were talking about, sometimes they want to add bathrooms on and different things where there hadn't been, and I know you had explained to me a problem, it was a mistake on how they brought the water down and what kind of problems that can occur with that.
Right. Obviously, it's best if you use a qualified plumber and that kind of thing. If you're into that kind of stuff and you want to do a home project even, get a little bit of advice before you go do something like that. someone who worked on this house, the water comes in on this side of the house. There's a bathroom back here on the first floor, a bathroom on the second floor, and then a master bath that's on this side of the house. And in order to get the water, rather than taking the water under the house, whoever decided to put that in did a big loop where they came upstairs, took Peck's water line, brought it around, chiseled out a space down a stairwell, and pushed the pipe back in there and tried to cover it over. And then they brought it out on the wall, but there was a beam under that wall. So they actually had to bring it out of the wall, drill a hole, run it into the floor, and then take it over to the bathroom area. So it made for a lot of problems with the finished look and that kind of stuff with the house. Not to mention, when we got ready to finish some things, there was water lines that were going to be in the way. So we ended up having to tear all that out, set things the way they should be, where the water will come down this side of the house, go to the bathroom on this side of the house under the floor, as opposed to down a stairwell.
And the other thing with those water lines is, folks, you may not realize, but the longer that they have to travel from that hot water heater, the longer it takes for your hot water to heat up. And I don't know about you, but I don't like to sit there and let my water run for 15 minutes until I can get some hot water. So let's take a look at that. What's being used right now is kind of a guest room, but show us that beautiful fireplace and what your plans are for that room.
Sure. Well, interestingly, the original house stopped at this wall. So the back door to the house would have been right here, and it would come out this way. This ceiling was an original ceiling that was probably a porch ceiling, and that's all the original wood and that kind of stuff that's still in place, still good, and will remain in the house as, again, a detail that, hopefully people will find aesthetically pleasing.
Now this is a beautiful, large room, beautiful windows over there. I mean, this is spectacular. And what they plan on doing here, you said it's like a living room or something?
Yes, this will be a sitting room. And so it'll be furnished, have TV and all that kind of stuff in it.
Isn't that beautiful? I mean, this is just spectacular, this fireplace.
The original house was heated by a fireplace. Shortly after that, they did add gas, and you see things like this where, they just ran it through the floor, added a small tube to go to a gas heater, and so now the only heat in the house is this gas heater. Doesn't really take care of the whole house. It heats this room nicely, but not the whole house. So one of the things that we're looking at adding is a heat and air conditioning system. There is no air conditioning in this house either. So it's completely without HVAC for right now. That's getting ready to go in here. So.
All right. Well, let's take a look upstairs. Let's take a little walk up there if you want to. Or do you have something else down here?
I was going to show them the windows here.
Okay.
We talked about the windows and making sure that they were measured properly and that kind of thing. And what you see around the top of this window, somebody has added an extra piece of trim that shouldn't be there because they mismeasured the windows. And so, again, maybe not to everybody. To me, that takes a little bit of the visual appeal away from the house itself.
And again, lipstick and rouge, folks, outside. This is going to be a beautiful garden area once that gets cleaned up. Like I said, I can just envision it sitting in here and just really enjoying that and the beautiful trees out here. Nice little built-in shelf right there.
Mm-hmm. They have one on each side of the fireplace.
Yeah, that's neat.
These will remain just openings. There won't be any doors or anything on these. So it'll be open to the house.
Right. Go ahead.
Where do you want to go to next?
Right up there. Yeah.
This is the area that I was talking about that had the pipe in it.
Uh-huh.
And so we ended up having to tear a lot of that out, and now it's a matter of getting it put back in and making it look like it was never there in the first place. So that wall is all the original wall.
This is a nice staircase. I'm not feeling any wobbles in it. It feels pretty sturdy, no issues. It's got the handrails there already. So what are we looking at here? Let's go around. And beautiful little area there with some windows, lots of natural sunlight able to come in here.
Mm-hmm.
This is neat. What?
This is a unique little area. Originally, it was a storage area. It had a little door on it and that kind of thing. She wanted to use it for a sitting area, potentially for children to read and stuff like that. So we incorporated an archway and just an open room that somebody can go in and sit, read, do that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. You know, and one of the things that you might notice here, you know, that odd wall here, a lot of these homes, you know, have that, but you know, you just do the best that you can do and make the most of the area. But you know, even an adult, if you had the right furniture in there and a little bookshelf, it'd be perfect.
Right. One of the things coming up the stairs, if you look at this, it looks a little different. This area actually, as you got to the top of the steps, you had to come this way to get around an offset that was built out here. So we took that out to give it that, again, look like it was made that way from the beginning.
Right.
And when we did that, we redid the ceiling so that it is a little different, but not a bad visual appeal at all.
Okay.
This will be an upstairs bathroom. It'll have a shower in it. The shower will be tiled, and it'll be tiled on the ceiling as well. So because it's so short up here, we didn't want the water splashing on the ceiling causing problems. So we're going to go ahead and tile that area as well. So
Another tip, folks, right there.
this area used to be attic space, and she wanted something where kids could come in and play and that sort of thing. People could sit, all that sort of thing. Probably we'll end up with a TV up here as well for the kids. But you can see, obviously on that side of the room, the lower wall and that sort of thing is space that is more attractive to children than it is to adults. But I'm sure when this gets finished out and the kids get here, they'll have lots of time to play up here and do all the things kids want to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, those nice windows where you can look out over the property is really nice. Lots and lots of beautiful natural sunlight.
So this is one of the bedrooms, and we decided that we were gonna split the heat and air systems because you don't really want to put ductwork under a house like this if you can keep from it. Number one, you have an issue with wildlife possibly chewing into it and those kind of things. If you use a metal duct or something like that, rust can be an issue. So on the lower level, we're going to use mini splits that are like individual heat and air units per room.
Kind of think about like hotel rooms when you go in there and you have your individual units.
Mm-hmm. For the upstairs of the house, we decided to use a traditional system. It's a regular heat pump type system. And we're going to put the air handler or the furnace type unit in the attic. So we've incorporated some attic stairs here to allow them to carry everything up there and be able to work up there to get it all hooked up and that sort of thing. That's going in pretty soon, hopefully. But keep in mind too, you know, when you say heat and air, a good example, the guys that are coming out to do it are licensed to do heat and air, but they're not licensed for the electrical. So an added expense that a lot of people don't think about is now having that electrician come out to run the wire and that sort of thing to get it into where they can hook to it and do the things that they need to do.
All right. Oh, this is nice. Another little nook right here. What are we planning for this little area? I'm gonna back up so they can kind of get a
This area,
visual of that.
the ceiling fan here will come down and a decorative light's gonna go there. She's talking about putting a high table and some stools so people can sit here, enjoy a glass of wine or whatever they want to do. But that gives them the windows to look out on the property and the natural space out there to, again, incorporate that nature into their stay. So this room is another one of the bedrooms. And you can see we've torn out a lot of stuff in this room. There used to be a small closet here, but it was so small that honestly you couldn't get a hanger in there. And we had talked to one air conditioning guy. He wanted to put his air conditioning units in there. That didn't work out. So the next guy, he's going to put it in the attic for us. And we can lose that and make this all open space as well. This area behind Nancy here, this area was closed off. And we decided to open that out. Now when we did, as we took this wall out, this picks up the load from the roof. So what we have to do now is build a beam to go across here that will pick up that weight and support that weight to keep the roof from sagging over time. So that's not in yet, but we will be able to put it in. It'll be pocketed in over here, and we'll build it so that it can be pocketed in on this end as well to support that span across here. And that will come down. So it'll come down about 5.5 inches. The drywall will come over here, come down, and then go to meet this. And that'll give that much extra room for this bedroom. This bedroom is probably going to be a bunk room. So there will be bunk beds and potentially a full-size bed or 2 full-size beds and the bunk beds in here.
One thing, when investors are looking at property, and especially beginning ones or those who may not have really been thinking about doing it as Airbnb, you might have some really great ideas for the property, but one consideration is going to be how that's going to affect your insurance and your liability. Gary, you want to tell us about the little idea that she had for this room, and then she's going to be, checking into that.
Originally, she had thought she wanted to take these 2 windows out, put in a double French style door that would go out to a balcony and build a balcony or a deck out here this high up off the ground. We're about 13 feet off of that concrete patio down there. And one of the considerations I told her she needed to look into was the liability if she rents this out as an Airbnb for having an open deck, and the people that may stay here and what they do and the potential for somebody falling over or something like that. Especially if they're going to have kids and that kind of thing. And this house will be designed for kids, obviously, with a lot of the spaces in here that are going to be designed around children and having them space to play and that sort of thing.
So this has been a fabulous tour. I want to go back for just a minute. When you first walked in here and you looked at this project, I know you have experience, but a lot of people do not have experience. What are some of the things that you looked at first? When you decided your plan, how did you decide what project you were going to tackle first? Kind of walk us through what your plans are for this house and, kind of step by step what you plan on doing. And I can't wait to come back when it's done, by the way.
Okay, sure. My first consideration was the age of the house. I mean, a house that was built in 1901 obviously is a lot different than a house that was built 10 years ago or last year. And so my first consideration was, what am I going to get into potentially when I start looking at that? Now, as I said, other people had worked in here, and that wasn't always the best thing. A lot of stuff they did ended up getting torn out and replaced. that's extra expense. There's no reason to hire somebody to come in and do work and then have to hire somebody else to come in and tear that out and put it back in the right way. So I looked at all that kind of stuff, but I also looked at, is it something that I can do and make it look right? If it's not something I can do and make it look right, maybe that project needs to be changed altogether or something like that. As far as getting started, there's a lot of things that were done. The flooring downstairs that was put in as finished flooring. As you noticed, all the cabinetry is sitting down there and that kind of stuff. So a lot of that was in the way. It's filled up with dust and dirt as we put drywall up and sanded the drywall and that kind of thing. So, you know, if I were to start the project from the beginning, I would schedule those things later in the process. The heat and air obviously was another issue. We talked to about 5 different heat and air companies, and a lot of them gave estimates and never answered when we talked to them about anything else. So we had an issue with that. We had a couple of people who had started, put in a little bit of duct work, and never came back. So again, having somebody who, can come out and take care of your needs for that, again, is a huge issue. And it may take 4 or 5 people before you get to that point. So, thinking about when you want to do those in the project. Obviously, we couldn't close up areas that were going to have ductwork in it and that kind of stuff until we got that stuff finished. So that delayed some of the areas that we were working, and that became a little bit of an issue. Another thing to think about, when I was working in here, taking out some of the walls, I found a lot of things that were not good. There were places in here where 2 wires were spliced together inside a wall and there was no box around them. There was no access to them. So if something happened there, an arc or something like that, which is a possibility, that would be a good place for a fire to start inside a wall like that. And honestly, the old house would have burned down relatively quickly. So there's a lot of things that I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And rather than saying I'll do this project for a certain amount of money, I opted to say I'll do the project if you like. However, as we go along, things are going to change a good bit. And so I can't give you a final price on the price of the remodel job. And we finally agreed that we would do it for cost plus. In other words, the materials plus the time that we have and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the way it's been going. Has it taken a little bit longer than I've originally anticipated? Absolutely. And as I got into things and saw problems, I had to stop, fix those problems, and then continue on. So as you plan out your timeline, give yourself some white space in there. And I think most of your project managers will tell you that, you can plan, but that white space is probably going to save you at some point when somebody can't make it when they need to be there or something like that. Having that white space available gives you a chance to save your project without causing undue stress, finance, all of those kind of things. So just a couple of things there to think about as well.
And something else that people don't realize there, for example, she's wanting to use this as an Airbnb. If she knew better that this wasn't going to happen, but I'm just going to give you a scenario. What if she had bought this property and was expecting to have it done and renovated by season this year? She's went through, 2 sets of contractors. Now she's on her 3rd. And all that money, double, triple spent. And her timeline now is jacked up. So those are all things that you really need to take into consideration when you're looking at a renovation project, let's just say.
Absolutely.
And weather too. If you're doing stuff outside, weather can really be a deterrent.
Sure.
So, do you have any earthly idea about how long? What is kind of your goal? When would you like to have this project completed?
Originally, she wanted the place completed for Thanksgiving so she could have her family here for Thanksgiving. That's not something that was even remotely possible. And as we got up closer and closer, I had to explain to her that's not going to happen. Then it was Christmas, and again, wasn't going to happen. So delays in heat and air and all that kind of stuff just would make that impossible. And hopefully, I'm going to be out of here in the next couple of months. And so shortly after that, I think she wants to start on the barn. We'll see how that goes. But, like I say, hopefully in a couple of months, I'll be able to wrap things up and have everything trimmed out, finished out, looking nice.
Fantastic. Sounds like a plan. And again, I cannot wait to come back and take a look. Folks, I hope you've enjoyed our trip here with Gary Sizemore over here in Elberta, Alabama. I'm Nancy Gaskins. And for those of you, if you have been dreaming about becoming a real estate investor, but you don't have any cash, credit, or know-how, you really ought to consider coming joining our Wealth Builders Club, because you don't have to have any of that stuff. It's all going to be done for us. So anyways, again, talk to you guys soon. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and watch all of our videos, and we'll be coming back and seeing the project once Gary's finished. Thanks, Gary.
Sure.